Mr. Kuhn, the floor is now yours. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for two great presentations. I want to start with, and thank you, Darren, for the breakdown of emissions in New Brunswick. I mean, I've looked at them on the inventory, but to see it graphically is quite helpful. So you see the substantial contribution of nitrogen fertilizers. There was a decline from about 2004, I would say, to 2014, and then it rebounded. Is there any understanding of what happened there?
I don't have one, but I can look into it. It sometimes is a function of crop switching, and it's sometimes a function of prices. Cedric might know.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track there, Darren. We really have, since that period, David, seen a change in our cropping system design in the province. Maybe transition more from small grains to corn and soybean crops, which are heavier feeders, so they would be requiring increased rates of nitrogen. And we've also, as we hone in our agronomy programs, we have driven our average yields up over time, which does drive increased use of fertilizer to maximize those genetic potential of those crops.
Okay, thanks. Well, Cedric, while you're speaking, you said that we've basically known what to do since the 1930s in terms of getting nitrogen down, but it's just not been done. So what's needed to support farmers in doing that? What should be in this climate action plan that would support farmers in actually implementing?
Thanks for the question, David. And just to clarify that, if you go back into some literature, and I was speaking with John Russell from the Alliance office last week about this, he was reading some old fact sheets from the 30s that talked about crop rotation, cover cropping, manure nitrogen use. So those documents were more focused on the cultural applications of soil management principles as opposed to nitrogen fertilizer. But in today's day and age, and also lime, the pH management was a major consideration. We still bang that drum every time we get a chance. An increase of 0.5 pH gives us 6% more nitrogen use efficiency on average. What I think we've been missing on the nitrogen management side is a lack of penalty. And now we're seeing that penalty. And Darren, stated very well, and, follow all the work that Darren does on the nitrogen management side. It's been or without a penalty on the back side, you can use it in as much as possible. So we don't have that option anymore. We're backing ourselves up. And now if you take a look at the pricing structure for nitrogen, it's through the roof for next year. We're dealing with geopolitical trade type policies that are now further impacting our profitability on our Canadian farms. So we really need to take a hard look at our reliance on external or exterior sources of nitrogen within the system. The other thing I would say, penalty, and that's the stick, and now let's look at the carrot. Having the value chain step forward, like McCain's, like Cavendish, like Agripure, and say, look, we're signed on to these global sustainability initiatives. We're going to need you guys to step to the plate and implement these BMPs. But further to that, I think we need to hold them account to say, all right, we'll share the profit of these sustainability initiatives to help you implement those BMPs on farm. You stack that up with the On-Farm Climate Action Fund, $200 million, which is a great start, but we need to keep going, right? And really drive BMP adoption through small incremental incentives on farm. And then it goes to culture, right? Having the people available to support the primary producers in implementing those BMPs. Because I agree with Darren, it's just a drop in the bucket where we're starting. To me, the major limitations we're going to have of deploying the funds that we currently have allocated is people. We don't have an extension service anymore. our agronomists that work at the retail level aren't necessarily in line with these kind of sustainability goals. We need to generate a new generation of agronomists that will pull sustainability into day-to-day operations.
So did see the recommendation, I don't think, but would you recommend that the an extension service be reestablished and revitalized?
I think we need to take a hard look at how we do that, David. We're seeing more and more that industry is taking a lead in this process. We get our non-government organizations like New Brunswick Soil Crop Improvement Association, Valores, right? Atlantic Grains Council. We've got some infrastructure, but it's relatively new. So do we need to go back to the old extension model of it all being at government level? No. Does it all need to be at industry? No. Do we need to work in partnership and have good collaborations with good industry outputs as our goal, as a collective? I would say yes.
What about moving manure from where there's lots that can't be used on farm to operations where they don't have livestock but need the nitrogen? Does New Brunswick have an effective system to move manure around that way?
I really love your concept, and I had advanced this at University of Manitoba years ago. We were talking about sustainability on the prairies, and not that we would take down going concern operations and move them, but as, say, chicken barns in the north of the province, and their useful life, right? They need to be rebuilt. Absolutely. I think we should be looking at relocating those livestock production facilities to where we've got annual cropland, where the grain that's feeding those animals or the forage that's feeding those animals is likely being raised, right? So closing off that nutrient loop, which takes us, closer to that organic regenerative model that Darren and Claire were suggesting. So again, does that take some long-term thought, planning, and collaboration? Absolutely. Is it possible? For sure. But we've all got to come to the table with solutions mindset at play.
Then on the side of cows, I'm always on the side of cows. So I won't tell that story. But so here's the thing. It's important to keep livestock on the land and probably to increase the mix on some regions of the province where livestock is largely absent. But what are the options for addressing the methane from cattle?
So we know that there's been a fair number of advancements on the nutrition side, and really balancing those rations in as much as possible, absolutely critical. And I know Darren's going to say, well, Cedric, those are very, very small incremental changes. And he's absolutely right. It is a challenge. Looking at some new technologies, seaweed type additives that reduce methanogenic activity within the rumen, definitely something on the go. We're seeing some feeding trials that are being kicked up in the Maritimes currently. So we'll be watching that closely. Increasing the quality of forage that goes into those rations, absolutely essential. And I mentioned in my slide peripherally there, but a lot of our forage lands are not maximized to their potential in terms of quality. We need to amp up that game. The last one I would say on the livestock side would be moving towards a more comprehensive renewable energy policy that allow us to see biogas reactors going in on our farms that have manure resources, ideally set up, to be able to take off-farm sources of organics, further reducing methane emissions from our landfills, and closing that nutrient loop in terms of embedded nutrients within our food system. So again, those are all pieces within a complex model that need to be evolved. So that solution is going to take people that can go one-on-one with the growers to help them walk through each of those individual steps.
Let me just ask about biodigesters, because Jacques and Rock, the forge really broke, the ground in New Brunswick on that, and I visited their place before they ever did that, but a couple of times since over the years, and it's really impressive what they've done. But unlike what happened in Quebec, where it took off in a sense, and there's quite a lot of biodigestion going on farm around the area, and the energy being generated, put into the grid, I guess. But that hasn't happened in New Brunswick Do you want to speak to what it would take to basically build on what Jacques and Rock have demonstrated on their farm that's been quite successful?
Yeah, I think we I did a fair amount of study on this about 12 years ago. We traveled to Germany, took a look at their renewable, their feed-in tariff rates, and what it took to really drive innovation adoption across that landscape. Ontario really tried to mirror that to some success. The key really is, David, to see feed-in tariffs that fully recognize the cost of generation by technology, right? Wind is here, biogas is here, solar's here. You've got to be able, you got to have a comprehensive policy that supports a return on investment. And we know what those costs are, right? So I mentioned in my slides, moving from $20 a ton where we were, moving up to $170 a ton to 2030, right? Biogas generation, you can make it work for 17 to 22 cents a kilowatt hour, right? Right now, call it 12 at the meter level. What is that incremental value of the carbon as you move out to $1.70, right? Those are the kind of full comprehensive conversations we need to have. And if we want to drive innovative technology adoption, if we want to drive distributed renewable energy like Gaetan has suggested earlier, we need to have a more comprehensive feed-in tariff policy that works for distributed generation across the landscape.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kuhn. I'll move now to